Hey guys, welcome to the new video where I'm going to be talking about the films I watched in theaters this month in October of 2025. I started off the month by rewatching Homebound in theaters. It was just as heartbreaking the second time, if not more than the first, and I just wanted to do my part in supporting this film during its brief theatrical run. It's a miraculous film that deserves a lot more love and support from its audience. I don't want us to fail yet another great film in service of commercial slop. Next, in terms of the new October releases, I watched the much awaited Kantara Chapter 1. Rishabh Shetty has done it again. Kantara Chapter 1 is a loud, maximalist, and entertaining time at the movies. It's got all the elements of a well done commercial masala film. The film is really funny, has some genuinely exhilarating and inventive action sequences, and is a bold and moving piece of masala cinema that retells the age-old tale between good and evil. But the film does it so effectively that it's a momentous experience. It boasts of some solid special effects and CG animals, along with its staggeringly good direction. Rishabh has immense command inside and behind the frame, and with a stellar combination of his roaring performance and a classical yet electric score, there are many moments in this film that feel spiritually primal in nature. Plus, the film looks like $1,000,000, with not an ounce of laziness to be found in the construction of every frame. The tangibility of the costumes and sets are palpable and make the world of the film feel lived in yet grandiose. It's also nice to see a Chapter 1 film actually be a complete story with catharsis while also leaving intrigue for the second chapter. There's no unsatisfying cliffhanger, it's just a good old film that tells its entire story. And yeah, the film isn't devoid of its problems, as is often with these films. It's overly long, and I eventually grow tired of the excessive violence and bloodshed towards the third act. The impact of the deaths begin to nullify, but I'm pleasantly surprised to see the absence of the regressive elements from the first film, such as the blatant misogyny depicted as romance. Its use of narration can be a little exhausting, but it comes across more as a revision of a folk tale that you'd pass on to future generations than a rehashed, lazy storytelling tool, which is why it's able to get away with its use of voiceover. Plus, the story of the film isn't at all a new one. It's a classic story of the oppressors versus the oppressed, the royalty versus the natives, man versus nature. But the way in which Rishabh makes his story his own, with the inclusion of his culture and mythology, is what makes the telling of this tale unique and special. Come to think of it, Kantara Chapter 1 is the only large-scale, high-budget commercial mass film this year, with supremely high expectations, that actually lived up to the hype. You can tell that years worth of blood, sweat and tears went into the making of this ambitious passion project. And dare I say, it might even be a tad bit better than the first film. Either way, this film is a rollicking time at the cinema. Watch it on the biggest screen and with a packed audience if you can. It is an incredibly rewarding big screen experience. I genuinely cannot wait to watch Chapter 2. Avatar: The Way of Water. I finally saw this during its re-release before Fire and Ash, and man, holy fuck, this movie is just so fucking good, man. Every time I watch it, I'm reminded of why this is one of my favorite films ever made. I am not joking. This movie fucking rocks and operates on a whole other level. There's nothing to say about this movie that hasn't been said already. The special effects are insanely impressive. The wonderful performances and the mocap perfectly capture the intricacies of the actors. It's really fucking good. And the film itself, oh my god, what an experience. I had secured IMAX tickets for this film as intended, and sadly that showing got cancelled and I had to go ahead with a ScreenX showing, for it was literally the only option I had. And to be honest, I actually had a pretty good experience with this format. Yes, it has its issues. If you look at the screen on the sides, the color grading and saturation of the image is very different compared to the primary image at the center. Plus, the footage that is in the side screens look like a PS3 video game. The graphics look really bad if you care to observe them. But I suppose that's not a huge problem because you're meant to focus on the primary screen in the middle. And overall, the format was pretty successful in creating an incredibly immersive experience. It is not as good as IMAX, that is the ideal way to watch this film, I believe, but ScreenX wasn't too bad either. But apart from this experience, as a film, this is the shit right here, man. Excellent filmmaking all around, brilliantly written, and as I have said time and time again, I absolutely adore the fact that this movie realizes that it is heavy on plot and most certainly focuses on it, but its true heart and real interest lies in simply hanging out with the characters, interacting with the world. For a few moments, that becomes the story. It reeks of utmost confidence to do something like that in a big studio Hollywood blockbuster. To not worry about our dwindling attention spans and actually take bold choices that ultimately serve the narrative and characters. Because I honestly wouldn't have minded watching these characters learn how to swim and just learn about this world for like maybe 6 hours. It's just so nice and refreshing to see a film that also emphasizes on its imagery. Yes, the plot keeps running and those sequences are very well paced and well edited to keep our attention. But the beauty of the film is revealed in its quiet moments, where the camera simply becomes a seemingly passive tool to show us some absolutely gorgeous images. It's not style without substance, the style is the substance. Cameron proves that he's still the master of action filmmaking while also creating emotionally compelling characters that I was completely invested in, while also unsubtly incorporating biting social commentary about environmentalism, animal cruelty, capitalism, settler colonialism, and so much more. His staunch beliefs in these things haven't been more clearer, and I'm just so glad that he unabashedly just swung for the fences. But apart from all the mechanics in terms of the film's technical prowess, I just want to emphasize just how moving a film this is. Yes, the special effects are staggeringly good, the sound design, the score, and the direction are all very important aspects of the film that define its quality. But I always leave this film thinking about its images and its characters. Maya Khan is easily my favorite character. He's my fucking goat, and he must be protected at all costs. But Loak is the character that I've always personally related to the most. That's why the conclusion of his and Jake's arc in the end never fails to make me emotional and almost makes me a sobbing mess each time. Speaking of which, the third act is pretty much fucking perfect. It has all the applaud-worthy moments that made me cheer in sheer joy and excitement, but it also has the much-needed smaller, quiet moments where the characters complete their arcs and reach their catharsis. I could honestly go on and on about this movie and never stop because I fucking love it to death. And it was probably the fastest 3 hours of my life, and I'm just so incredibly happy and grateful to have gotten to see this in cinemas once more. The special preview has gotten me only more excited than I already was for Fire and Ash, and I'm very curious as to how Cameron can top himself with his next venture because this film is a fucking masterpiece. One battle after another. Round 4 in theaters and it still hits just as good. Sadly not in IMAX because the showings are long gone. It literally only lasted in IMAX for 1 week in Indian cinemas. But watching this in regular 2D wasn't bad either. Obviously it's best watched in the IMAX format, but we sat at a decently close seat for the 2D screening, so the experience was still pretty good. This is probably my final time seeing this movie in cinemas. I had one final viewing left in me and I'm glad I saw it because this film is already an instant classic filled with now iconic moment after moment. That kinetic prologue, the perfect selection of needle drops, DiCaprio being an underrated but fantastic comedic performer, Sean Penn's constipated core walk, Sensei is my goat, Johnny Greenwood's ethereal and offbeat score. I just love how politically charged it is as well, how heartfelt it is, how thrilling it is, how personal it is. This is a film that I've thought about endlessly since I first saw it, ranging from reminiscing about its theatrical experience to breaking it down and understanding it thematically. It's one of those few blockbusters that's incredibly entertaining to watch, yet has tons of complex layers that are fun to analyze. The Smashing Machine. The streets are wrong in hating this film because this film actually rocks. I honestly really like this movie. Shot on 16mm, it looks really gorgeous. It really adds to making us feel like we are in the time period the film takes place in. The performances are stellar. Dwayne is actually trying here, and for the most part, he does succeed. And Emily Blunt is easily the heart and soul of this movie. She's a revelation who continued to surprise me as the film went on. The seldom ethereal score is an interesting choice for a movie about a wrestler, and it somehow completely works for this story. And while I do understand why a lot of people have found this to be boring, there wasn't a single moment where I was disconnected or zoned out of the film. I also love how different this is from Safdie's other films like Good Time and Uncut Gems. This filmmaker duo had been stereotyped into making the kind of films that are incredibly fast-paced and quote-unquote anxiety-inducing. And so it was wonderful to see Benny make a film that looks and feels nothing like his previous two films. It most certainly has its own unique identity that feels confident of itself. I really like the semi-documentary style of filmmaking, with the camera loosely following the characters. It feels like it's figuring out its framing and composition while style it's being shot, which gives it an interesting visual language, making the film feel grounded, yet it still has exciting camera moves that really make the film feel alive. Yes, the film has its problems, primarily being its thematic aimlessness. I feel like I do have an idea on what it's about, but the film itself doesn't have that clarity. To be honest, I quite liked the lack of a clear plot, but I wish they did more with the already interesting characters. I think that's the reason the general audience did not resonate with this film. It's a lack of much needed emotional investment that holds the film from being truly great. But despite everything, it's honestly really nice to see The Rock in a real movie instead of on streaming slop. Caught stealing. This was so much fucking fun. Seriously, man, this is the definition of a fun ride. It's nothing like what I expected from an Aronofsky movie, but it doesn't matter because this was incredibly entertaining. Austin Butler is really outstanding. Zoe Kravitz is honestly kind of the heart of the movie. She was actually perfect casting. The filmmaking is genuinely really fucking good. Aronofsky really has the sauce, especially in some standout moments, and the script is tightly written. You have no idea where it's gonna go, but it still leaves you satisfied. The character arcs, callbacks, and Chekhov's guns are all perfectly executed. This did not feel like 107 minutes at all. It actually felt kind of longer, and I mean that in the best way possible because I was having an absolute blast throughout. Yeah, it's not Aronofsky's best work. It actually stands out as the most different film from his filmography. But you know what? If what he makes is this entertaining, then I do not mind him taking a few unique swings. Tron Ares. I really do not have much to say about this. It was surprisingly not as bad as I thought it would be, but it was unsurprisingly mediocre. It's always nice to see Greta Lee in a film. Jared Leto is terribly miscast. He has no charisma or on-screen presence whatsoever, but the Nine Inch Nails soundtrack is quite literally the only thing that doesn't make me regret watching this. Listening to that soundtrack in a theater is the only redeemable aspect of this forgettable movie that I'll forget about in T-1 day. I would have loved to see this in IMAX if I cared enough to spend more money. Sound of Music. 3 hours of dazzling colors, beautiful music, and anti-fascist sentiments. I am so glad I went into this film blind. The only thing I knew about this film is the image of a woman singing in the mountains, and man was I not prepared for all that this film encompasses. Fantastic and charming performances, lovely music, and a strikingly classical cinematography aesthetic that produced some gleaming and glistening images, heavily reminiscent of the old Hollywood era, further solidified this film as a rightfully beloved classic. I had a big, stupid grin on my face throughout the entire runtime. A film beaming with life and love. I am just so grateful to have seen this for the first time in cinemas, for this was pure movie magic. The Godfather Part 2. Getting to see this in a cinema hall was no less than a religious experience. Those 3.5 hours breezed past me as I sat there enchanted by this masterpiece. I'm really not exaggerating when I say that this might just be the greatest film ever made. There wasn't a single second where I wasn't riveted or moved. Pretty much a perfect movie in every regard. Just as good as the first, if not better. I consider it a blessing to have gotten to see this in theater. Transcendental and powerful in every sense of the word. That final flashback sneaks up on me with every rewatch, and each time it breaks my heart a little more. It's honestly a miracle that this film exists and happens to be this good. Coppola was on something else in the 70s, man. Good Fortune. This was kind of fun. If I'm being honest, I think this film had a lot of potential, but it bordered on being mediocre. The impeccable cinematography and Keke Palmer are my favorite aspects of the film. It genuinely looks incredible. I mean, the lighting and color grading are gorgeous, but the film is mostly kind of bland. The filmmaking is standard, the performances are fine, it is occasionally funny, but I never felt any passion behind this film. Nobody looks like they really want to be there. It feels like everyone just did the bare minimum, except the DOP. Plus, maybe this is just a personal gripe, but I found Aziz Ansari to be quite annoying. His performance just didn't work for me. It's one of the many points that dragged this film down a little. Towards the second half, the film did make its intent and themes more apparent. It's nice to see a film critique the capitalist American system that benefits only the elite and further oppresses the underprivileged. It's actually interesting to have a premise where a rich and poor guy switch their lives to see what it's like on the other side of the economic spectrum. But it's a concept that had so much potential, and I feel like this film didn't explore it with enough nuance or depth. The film feels aimless most of the time, and the underdeveloped characters just make the many scenes towards the end feel unearned. Though I am all for a film talking about the unjust class difference and how the poor are treated, I just wish the film executed this with more bite. Bison Kaalamadan. It's insane that there is a new Mari Selvaraj movie out and I had no idea about it until recently. Either way, I'm really glad I caught this in theaters because this is a staggeringly ambitious yet profoundly moving piece of masala cinema that you honestly don't get to see often. Solid filmmaking, wonderful performances, and a rousing score definitely make this entertaining to watch, but its themes of caste discrimination, unfortunately still prevalent in this day and age, is what solidifies this film as disappointingly relevant. Those in power will do anything and everything to stay where they are, which means the continuation of the oppression of the lower caste who aren't given the basic right to live in peace. And it's interesting to see a film tackling caste through the lens of a sports movie, given that other Indian films from this year have explored this very topic in very different ways. This film most certainly works as an underdog sports drama, but with the underlying layer of caste discrimination as its central conflict. The amount of senseless bloodshed and violence caused as a result of this age-old discriminatory practice is made extremely apparent here. The film isn't devoid of its flaws, however. It is overly long, kind of clunky with its pacing, and begins to feel a tad bit repetitious at times, which left me feeling a little exhausted. But the film regains its central core towards the end, which left me with a feeling of hope, despite the threat of caste-based violence still continuing to prevail in this country. This is what masala cinema should aspire to be, in my opinion, using its commercial sensibilities to talk about prevalent issues plaguing society today. It should take advantage of its accessibility to bring to light the injustices we brush off in the news every day. By using this powerful medium of cinema, these films can make us empathize with those less privileged than us, so that one day, change doesn't seem like a pipe dream. Thamma. Okay, to be honest, I knew this film was going to be pretty bad, but this weekend, the weekend I watched this in, didn't really have any exciting new releases and I just felt like going to the movie theater. So I chose this film, and yeah, it's as bad as everyone says it is. This film has very little going for it. It is seldom funny and is occasionally pretty well lit, but apart from that, it's difficult for me to point out any positives. The writing is piss poor, the romance is cliched, the characters are heavily underdeveloped, the narrative is overstuffed, and the film just has absolutely nothing to say. At least these three films are well made and have some form of social commentary. Meanwhile, this film has no substance whatsoever, and even if I ignore that, it's not even an entertaining film. The greatest compliment I can give this film is that it's watchable. That is it. I wasn't bored out of my mind watching this, but it's still a bad film. It's nice to see Ayushmann Khurrana in a film. It's been a while since I've seen him in one. But it's so sad that this is the film that he chooses to star in. It would have had a little more merit if it was well made, but even its filmmaking is average at best. I felt absolutely nothing throughout the film, and by the end, I had just become exhausted with the poorly choreographed action, mediocre special effects, and deafeningly loud sound design that almost gave me a headache. I'm honestly tired of studios attempting their own cinematic universes. Even Marvel, the original studio that started this trend in the first place, has become a victim of forced interconnectedness that focuses more on cameos and star power rather than making a good movie. Commercial Hindi cinema has been in a slump, and it's these type of movies that maintain the status quo. It's mainly just the indie space that is keeping this industry afloat in terms of quality, and as someone who loves commercial cinema, I only have one thing to say to this industry: do better. And the final movie I watched this month in theaters is Diés Iraé. I'm so glad I went into this film blind because I was not at all prepared for this. Diés Iraé is a film that I had heard about just a few days ago. I had only seen the poster of this film floating around, somewhere on the internet once. But apart from the poster, the only thing that compelled me to watch this film was the director Rahul Sadashivan. When I found out that this is the same guy who directed Brahmayugam, I was instantly sold on watching this film. And man, am I glad I did, because Diés Iraé is a good time at the movies. It looks stellar, the filmmaking is unsurprisingly fantastic. The command director Rahul Sadashivan and DOP Shehnaz Jalal have behind the camera must be studied, for they're in complete control of their craft. Every camera move and wide shot is shot with purpose and intention. Speaking of which, the genre of the film is horror, and I personally found it to be absolutely terrifying. Now, yes, as someone who's scared of pretty much any horror film, this isn't a big surprise. But still, the filmmaking and spectacular sound design aid in creating some truly chilling sequences that had my ears numb from just how tightly I'd sealed them shut, simply because of how petrified I was. Now, Some of the flaws of the film did become a little more apparent to me when I sat with the film after it ended. Mainly the writing doesn't feel as narratively satisfying as I would have liked it to be, and I guess I just had incredibly high expectations for this film to be some sort of perfect masterpiece, since Brahmayugam was just that, which might have hindered my experience, for it wasn't on the level of that film. But despite all that, this is most certainly a very good film that left me frightened and entertained. Malayalam cinema continues to prove why they are the best film industry of this country. And I honestly can't wait to see more from this director, for he has solidified himself as a noteworthy horror filmmaker who just knows how to get the job done. So yeah, these are the films that I watched in October. To be honest, there are few other films that technically released in October. The films I'm really interested to watch, like Yorgos Lanthimos' Begonia, the Bahubali epic, the 4-hour re-release cut coming out even in IMAX, and Good Boy, but they are coming out on 31st October on a Friday, and I can only see them in the weekend, which would technically mean I would have watched those films in November, even though they are October releases. So I'm gonna stop the video here, and these are the films I watched in October. This is the ranking, and I will be talking about these films for the next month along with the new November releases, and of course the stuff that is re-released, like the Shah Rukh Khan's filmography has been released, like some of his films, and even the live action Spider-Man movies are also coming out next month, so I'm gonna try and watch some of those as well. So yeah, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments below what are the films you watched in October in theaters, what are the films that you are looking forward to for the rest of the year, and like, share, subscribe, support the channel, it means the world to me. And you know what, until next time, I'm gonna see you later. Bye bye.